I'm Vanessa Stretch. I just recently earned my PhD in a social justice program with Union Institute University. And my work is in social justice, and I'm a longtime teacher in Merced and Delhi, working towards higher education. And this just seems like something I want to get involved with. So here I am, and I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, Vanessa. Why haven't we crossed paths?
Because I've been working on getting that piled high and deeper, and now that I've got that done, I got my head up like this, going, "Oh, that's what's going on with life." So here I am.
Well, we will connect, definitely.
Definitely. I'm so excited. Looking forward to it. Hi, Jerome.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
How are you? Oh, hi, Alex. Hi, my love. How are you? Hi, Wanda.
Awesome. Okay.
They do know a few people. That's a good thing.
Hi, I'm Alexandria Marquez. I'm a special education teacher at Weaver Middle School, and I'm so excited to see Karyn.
Thank you. Welcome, Alexandra.
I'm Wanda Patrick. I'm also a special education teacher at Weaver Middle School. We're part of the literacy program that brought Karyn here from the very beginning. Hi, Karyn.
Hi, good to know you're there.
Welcome, beautiful. Hello, Dory.
Hi, my name is Dory. I'm Aboriginal education worker, and I work with a lot of high-risk children. I am from Prince George, BC, Canada. So I'm glad to be here. Hi, Karyn. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Wonderful. Welcome, Dory.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Lawrence, and I used to do restorative diversion programs and mediations, and now I am a conflict coach. And I'm just so interested in what you guys are going to talk about and just see how it affects me.
Awesome. Welcome, Kristen. Glad you joined us.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn White. I'm with the Merced NAACP, and also I work for Valley State Prison as an employee relations officer. And I was invited by Jerome, and I thought this would be a real interesting meeting to see how this whole process works. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome, Lynn. We have someone just put on the chat. Hi, my name is Susan. I'm a student, and I'm excited to learn about Karyn's story. Hello, Susan. Welcome.
My name is Tashelle Wright. I am a doctoral student here at the University of California in Merced. I study Black health, and so I'm really excited to see you all and be part of this conversation.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Gabe. I'm from Texas, and I'm just here to see what everyone has to say about the conversation.
What's up, Gabe? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Colton Dennis. I'm the director of the Merced Multicultural Arts Center here in Merced, and I'm just here to learn some more and see how I can incorporate that into our Multicultural Arts Center and our programs here.
Awesome. Welcome, Colton. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, my name is Marina. I am with the Child Development Center at CSU Stanislaus, and I'm just excited to gain as much information as I can and put in my toolbox. You truly do learn something every day, so that's exciting.
Awesome. Welcome, Marina. And this is Karina Franco. She says, hi, my name is Karina. I'm a director at Sierra Vista. Sierra Vista Child and Family Services in Modesto. I look forward to learning more from all of you. Welcome, Karina. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Yvonne Evans. I'm with the California Department of Education. I work with juvenile court and community school, children, alternative schools of choice, and independent study. And I was invited by Sheila Brooks.
Hello, Yvonne. Wonderful. Where's Sheila?
I don't know. I was looking.
I'll text her.
How are you?
Glad you joined
Hi,
us.
I'm good. I'm gonna not show my face because I'm multitasking right now. I've got a lot of things are happening with schools trying to reopen again, so I'm
Yes.
double duty here.
Wonderful. Thank you for your hard work right now. We appreciate that. Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Alan, and I live in Merced.
Alan, welcome, buddy.
Hi. Alan is one of our students as well. He just didn't want to say that. That's been on with us for a while.
AKA Sheila Brooks' son. Just jump right in, people.
Colette Ferris with Urban and Rural
Miranda.
Communities Connect.
Oh,
Okay, we'll go ahead and Colette, go ahead. I heard you first. Go ahead, Colette.
Colette Ferris with Urban and Rural Communities Connect. I'm glad
Okay.
to be online today.
Welcome, welcome, Colette. And then there was someone else. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jessica Moran. I'm a Dean of Instruction at Merced College. Sorry for the background noise. I too am multitasking, but I'm very happy to be here. And of course, anything that we do for our students, and especially during these trying times, it's just so important. So I do thank you so much for this.
Wonderful. Welcome, Jessica. Really appreciate you being here.
Hi, I'm Nicola Lumiere. I am with Weaver Middle School, and I'm excited to be here with you.
Thank you, Nicole. Welcome.
Nicole, this is Vanessa. Hi, I just wanted to tell you, I think you took my place. I was there for many, many years. Your name sounded really familiar, and I'm glad to finally meet you, just to let you know, small world. Because I worked at Weaver and I taught 7th grade for many, many years with Wanda and Alex and all of that. So I'm glad to meet you today. Added bonus.
I'm glad to meet you too. I think I still have a clipboard with your name on it.
Okay, well, just don't believe any of the bad stuff. All the good stuff is good. All the bad stuff, they're lies.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Awesome.
My name's Troy Selvey with California After School Network. And Andre and Jerome, thanks for setting us up.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy. Thanks for being with us. Okay.
Hello, my name is Tyrone Weaver. I'm from Sacramento, California. I am a middle school counselor, and I also am a consultant to the probation department here, do programs with our youth inside the facilities, those that are going off to prison and those that are going back and forth into the facilities, called capacity changers, just changing their minds about how to move forward.
Awesome. Welcome, Tyrone. Welcome. Okay. Amber said, hi, everyone. I'm Amber. I'm from Winton and work with Andre and Jerome for Restorative Justice. I work special education, and I'm also a student to be a special education teacher. Wonderful. Welcome, Amber. Link. Okay. Well, I know we have a lot of people on board, and sometimes it's a little bit daunting when it comes to welcoming. However, we like to know who's on here. We're going to go ahead and go forward based off of our time. Again, we want to respect the time for Karyn Parsons. Again, this is a little bit different than our usual Zoom circle, so I would usually give them a lot more time in welcoming because we usually have different issues that we would discuss. However, this is, again, our speakers forum, so Our speakers forum is something that we've been doing to bring in perspectives of professionals or people that are work in the community, work with students that are making impact and making a change in community, local and abroad as far as our nation. So we definitely know Karyn Parsons via visual watching on TV. However, there's a lot more to Ms. Parsons besides acting. There's a whole lot more. And so we definitely want to appreciate her time and the work that she does with children's books. So I just want to introduce Karyn Parsons, is best known for her role as Will Smith's Dempsey cousin, Hillary Banks. She's not Dempsey, that's her role that she played. She's very intelligent. In NBC's For the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, after leaving acting behind, Karyn has gone on and found and produced Sweet Blackberry, an award-winning series of children animated films to share stories about unsung Black heroes in history. Very powerful, featuring a narration from stars such as Alfred Woodward, Queen Latifah, Chris Rock, Lawrence Fishburne. The film has screened on HBO, Netflix, and are enjoyed by school and libraries across the nation's country. Karyn's debut novel, How High the Moon, hit bookshelves in March 2019. So, and we do have copies for all of our students and some particular people that have been on our calls recently that you will receive a copy. But if you do want a copy, they do sell on Amazon under that title. So if you're looking for a copy, I would say please get a copy. Support her work, support the communities and the information that you can receive from that. So without further ado, we want to welcome author, writer, actor, Karyn Parsons.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Am I up? Yeah, good. Okay. So, hi, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Did you? Are we gonna...
You're doing great, Karyn.
So can we? Yes, we can hear you. We can go ahead and hear you. So Karyn, if you want to just share about the work that you've done, the work that you're doing.
Well, you mentioned a little bit about Sweet Blackberry. I don't know if everybody's familiar with what Sweet Blackberry is, but for people who aren't, the idea of Sweet Blackberry was to bring little known stories of African American achievement to children, and through films primarily at this time. However, I'm happy to say that we're going to have picture books starting in December. We have our first picture book come out, and then next year we have another one at the top of next year coming out. But the whole idea was to bring stories to kids about people that you don't hear about so much in history, to inspire kids, empower them, and show them what they're capable of. And that's what the Sweet Blackberry is. Screen's doing all kinds of stuff. Are we okay?
Go ahead. Sorry, apologize about that.
I want to make sure I didn't lose you or anything. Yeah, so that's what pretty much what the Sweet Blackberry stories have been. They've been animated films for the most part. And then, yeah, How High the Moon is a novel. Oh, and just Sweet Blackberry you can find them right now on Canopy, which I think a lot of the educators have access to. You can find all the films on Canopy. And as far as How High the Moon, when you mentioned Amazon, I just wanted to say, if you can, especially now in the situation that we're in, if you can find a local bookstore, a lot of them are online. A lot of independent bookstores are online as well. And you can try to order directly from them if you can, because I think a lot of people are facing the threat of having to shut down. So whenever we can support those stores, instead of Amazon, who's not hurting a bit, that would be great too.
That's good to know.
Yeah. I think there's a site called, I think it's bookshop.com. I think it's, and it corrals independent bookstores. You know.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And
So
here's the cover of the book if you're looking for it, everyone.
Jerome's face is now How High the Moon.
Yeah, I'll have it in case anybody. How High the Moon.
So here it is right here. I just was looking for it so I can share it. How High the Moon Is. Again, this is a wonderful book to have in regards for reading, especially right now. Again, as Karyn said, what we're going through so we can share with our students. And this is a read that we will be providing for our students so they can be able to have an opportunity to just get information and read something that relates to them, that supports who they are.
Yeah, and I could.
And it's a very book. Go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the book has been, it's nice. It's been I've been packed quite a bit lately because of the things that we're going through right now. When people have requested books that they could bring to their kids or to their students, and so I've been hearing conversations of people sharing this book because it takes place during the Jim Crow South. For people who aren't familiar with what the book is about, it takes place in the 1940s in the Jim Crow South in a small town outside of Charleston, just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. And it follows a young girl, light-skinned girl who lives with her Black family, her grandparents, her cousins, and her mother, who's also Black, lives up in Boston. But she doesn't know, because of her complexion, if possibly she has a white father or not, and what that would mean during this time. But I think for a lot of people, the story and what goes on in everyday life in the 1940s in the South, I think what she's faced with, and she ends up going to Boston and sees the contrast, but also the story of George Stinney Jr. If you don't know who he is, he's also in the book. George Stinney Jr., as far as history, is a real person in history who was 14 years old when he was executed, the youngest person ever to be executed in our country for supposedly murdering 2 little girls. And this, of course, they would find out years later that when there was another trial, that the initial trial had been a sham and he was exonerated. But that was way after the fact, after this 14-year-old boy was put to death for something he didn't do. And I think the book has helped a lot of people understand some things from the past that have helped form the path to where we are today, and helps people understand how we got here a little bit.
What kind of inspired you to start the writing of this book? Do the research for this book out of coming from such a rich background in acting and films, to be able to dive into a book such as this?
Well, the writing I had done and wanted to do more of, but this book in particular, I think a few things informed it. One, initially I wanted to, my mom grew up in the Jim Crow South, but my mom, when she would talk about her growing up, always talked so favorably about everything. Everything was so positive. She was such a happy childhood. And then it started to occur to me of like, wait a minute, she grew up and when did she grow up and where did she grow up? And so I started, I had to ask her, like, you have to tell me the truth. You have to tell me a little bit more about what it was like and what the climate was like growing up in the South in the 40s during this era. And so I started to find out a little bit more about what life was like for her. And George Stinney had and I wanted to step into her shoes, and I also wanted to see what it would be like for me in her shoes as somebody who was biracial and my experiences growing up, but blend that with my mother growing up in South Carolina in the 40s and see what that might be like. And as far as George Stinney, when I was doing research for Sweet Blackberry over the years to this day, I always come across George's face at some point because it's a little known story from Black history, but it's not an inspiring or empowering story at all. Still, his story, it's always troubled me that people don't know about him. So he made his way into the book, not just because of that, but because he grew up in a little town outside of Charleston, South Carolina as well, around the same time that my mother did. And at first I had him further in the background of the story. But it was 2000, I was writing in 2016, and every time I opened up Facebook or opened up the papers, it seemed like another Black man or Black boy had been killed. This was just happening. It was almost, at one point, it felt like it was every day. It was happening all the time that we were hearing about something. And so it was very hard to not write about it in some way. And George ended up making his way to be more involved directly in the story than just background. But so that also had a big impression. What was going on in the news at the time, in our lives at the time, started to inform the book a little bit.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, thank you for that, for just connecting that. Now I know the work that you do now in writing, in regards to this message, what type of message did you want to give to students in writing this book, or just people that are reading this now? Because I know there's the surface of what the book is, but in your heart, just because your experiences and what you've gone through, what your mother has grown up in that Jim Crow era, your heart, be able to just kind of share with us what you want people that read that book to really get from that book.
I think, well, for me, I know when I read a book, or if I become very engaged in a film I'm watching, if I can relate to the characters, if I can get lost in them and in their world and kind of walk along with them and see what they see and smell what they smell, it can transport me to a time and a place, and I have a better understanding of that world. And my hope with How High the Moon is that I could bring people in to the world of Ella, who's the main protagonist of the story, bring them into her world so that they are walking with her and her cousins and experiencing what everyday life is for them. And that's everything from fishing and running through the woods and playing to encountering threats in the form of, teenage boys kind of terrorizing them, walking around, and white boys that don't usually stay over in their part of town, but that have made their way there, and just little threats and sometimes that come in, as well as people who are kind, but sometimes kind for not necessarily the right reason, favoring someone over somebody else because of how they look and what their perceptions are of things. So there's lots of different things that happen in their world, and I just would love it if I could bring somebody in and get to know George. George, one of the things about bringing George Stinney into this story is I was able to take him out of just that mugshot that I always see when I'm doing research for something and I come across George Stinney's mugshot, but to kind of give him a life and interests and a potential love interest, and to kind of, to play. And his little sister is in there as well, racing with them. And they're kids, and I want people to feel it and be with them and experience the joy of the childhood that they all have and everything that they're going through, so that their experiences aren't abstract history, like, oh, that happened back in the Jim Crow South, and it's just this abstract blob and, you know, on the pages of black and white books with little print. You know, I to be perfectly honest, I always have to tell people I hated history as a kid, because, and now it's like, that's my life. I'm not a historian, but everything with Sweet Blackberry and How High the Moon, I found myself here. But it's very funny, because I hated it because it was always presented like, you know, this is important, and here are these dates, and you have to remember these dates. Why? You know, I didn't know why this was pertinent to anything. The thing that I felt was lacking as an adult, that I realized was lacking for me, was engagement, was being able to relate to the people, being able to feel like their world is my world. Like, we're the same. These people in the books, they're like me. They're people like me. And I think a lot of the time history is treated as this abstract, you know, marker in time, as opposed to something that's made up of individuals just like us at this work. We're making history right now doing this. This is something that will be history in 5 minutes, you know. Hard for us to get it, how real it is. And I think it's important to impress that on kids. I think as we get older, we start to value and understand history a little bit better. But when it's just, you know, fed like castor oil to kids, and, you know, it's like, read all these chapters and, you know, memorize these dates for the test. I think it just becomes kind of like a big blob, and it's a pain. But if you can kind of bring them into a world and let them experience it, feel it, smell it, taste it, and they relate to things like, oh, that's like me. I like that too. Or, you know, I like whatever, ice cream, or I like this at this, they like going fishing. Or if they start to relate to even the smallest things, it brings it into their world. It makes it real for them. And my hope is that I can take people into that, and then they can have new compassion and empathy for the people and for the time and what they're going through and experiencing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that's very important in what you said. And it's very important in the work that we do with restorative practices to bring people to see perspective, there's both sides to the story, and see perspective, and get into a place where they can relate and bring those abstracts of what they don't see, what they don't understand, the fear of the unknown, into reality. You know, we hear the saying, you know, you haven't walked a mile unless you walked a mile in my shoes. And we hear that, but it's the reality of it is that you really won't know unless you sit down and have these experiences, or dialogue, or talk about it, or read books such as How High is the Moon, to be able to bring things into perspective and reality, and take, like you said, what happened then and kind of connect the dots now. And we know we don't want history to repeat itself, but it does. And so the reality of that is to be educated and be aware and be conscious of these things, so we can be able to make differences. There's some questions that here I do want to ask. That there was Karyn Lawrence said, what made Karyn's mom convey a positive outlook of her youth? So what made her mom convey a positive outlook of her youth during?
I think it was. I mean, I think it was really positive, and I think she did have a happy childhood. My mom was a very positive, happy person, and I think there are a few things. I think they were protected by the adults, was a huge part of it. They didn't live in the information age that we lived in, or even I grew up in. They didn't have a television set. They didn't have, certainly didn't have the internet. The information that adults received and understood and knew that was going on, and what children received, were different and were kept separate. So I'm sure that there was that, but also being protected by adults who didn't want them to know certain things that were going on if there wasn't a need for it. I don't think they were kept stupid, but I think that they were protected. And so I think that she honestly did feel like, because when I pushed, she felt like she honestly did have a really, she said, I know, I really do think I did. Now she conveyed some basic truths to me that weren't scary to her. I mean, she lived in a very segregated world. She rarely saw white people. And she talked about experiences of seeing when she did. She remembers there was a time where she and her brothers and sisters saw like some white kids on a truck that had stopped nearby. And they started playing with the kids. The kids got off and all the kids were playing together. And when the white parents found out, saw their kid playing with the kid, they flipped. And they didn't, and none of the kids understood what was going on. They really didn't get it at that time. She was really small when that happened. They really didn't get it. Like, why are they acting so weird? And the white kids didn't get it, and they pulled them away and they drove off. But you know, she didn't have a lot of experiences. She didn't have a lot of direct horrible experiences. Fortunately, I have talked to some people who have, but my mom, for the most part, I think she stuck to that, that she mostly had a really good childhood.
Yeah, yeah, and that is it's very important for those days, and even today, growing up in the Black community, growing up in experience those. My grandmother, same thing. She was one of those maids back in the day, and she would share those stories ever with my mom about growing up and not allowing her or didn't want for her to see or experience those things that she experienced. And so the life was sheltered, but the life was also because of segregation in that way. But in that way of feeling racism or feeling negative behaviors from others, it was a rare thing. And you might think it's like, well, why should have been? It's Jim Crow. It's oppression. You'd be surprised in the Black community, families are close, and to expose those things to children, that's one thing that parents back in those days did not want their kids to experience. Right. They want to take the brunt of whatever it is from their children, and right. So I can relate to that because those are some conversations I've had with my own grandmother before she passed, and she passed at 97 years old, so she had a lot of great stories. But let me go ahead and read. It's not about my grandmother, but I can relate to what you're saying. There were some points that was read, that was put out, and it reads, I hated history also growing up because no one looked like me. It was too one-sided. Yes, it was too one-sided. So that comes from Yvonne Evans. Yvonne, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful. Do you want to kind of elaborate that or ask a question with Karyn on that part?
I'm kind of interested. I like the fact that Karyn's books bring a humanistic side. I think that's what makes history more exciting if you know the background stories. One of my projects as in my master's program, I was a math major, and so I had to find some things in mathematics, and I learned about some of the people in math. They don't tell you this in a math class, but some of their background, their livelihood or how they were raised, very unique, very a lot of it's psychotic too, but just knowing about people's backgrounds and what they went through. Like a famous mathematician was a Greek woman, Hypatia, and I never heard about her until I had to do research. So I think hearing about this background stories, even like in art, you hear about Paul Gauguin, and his whole history of mental illness and what drove him to do what he did. And so I like hearing these background stories, even if they might be somewhat fictional, since you didn't know the young man. We don't really know a lot about the young man, but I like the fact that she's building a story with what she does know, and making it where kids could relate. I think that's the problem with our history. We just give those dates. I'm probably a little older than Karyn, but they just give those dates and this is what happened, and I just could not stand it. So it wasn't until college that I really enjoyed history more, and I took more African history and just other cultures. So
awesome.
That's all I got to say at this point.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Karyn, I have a quick question for you that just came in. Understanding that Jim Crow let racism and segregation be in the forefront of people's faces and minds as compared to this new Jim Crow times that are hidden, unspoken, and until recently, not so brilliant. How would you as an author / filmmaker address these issues?
That we're going through now? Well, I think one of the things I was going to say about what we were just talking about, and I think that this is about, I think this all goes together, which is the history books were written by a person, right? So I think it's really important to look at who wrote the book, who's telling the story, whose perspective is this? And I think the more we kind of pull that apart and we look at that all around, I think that that's important. I think that's important as artists. I think it'll help us with where we are now, what we've been told about where we are. I know there are so many people talking about, oh, we're in a post-racial world or whatever. There's all of these different ideas about, for so long, that we're trying to say that everything's okay, and we know it hasn't been. But I think that because some advances were made along the way, there were advances, we've been told that everything is okay. I think it's really important that we look. I'm really happy I see this with my son and how he's learning. He's constantly, when they're given a subject, they're not just in history, they're not just given the subject, they're given writings, and very different writings on the subject from different people with different perspectives, so that you can look at who wrote this piece and why would they say it this way? It's like if I, Jerome and I go and we hang out, and then we go and we each we get into a fight. We wouldn't get into a fight, Jerome, but let's just say you and I got into a fight and we run off, and we go running back to Wanda and we tell Wanda what happened. Now we're both going to be coming at it from two different things. We've both got two different ideas of what went down. It's the same thing. To me, it's the same thing with the history books. And unfortunately, there's been very little questioning that over the years. There's been very little questioning about who wrote this history, from what perspective we're hearing it. And I think it's really important for all of us to take a good look at that, and to teach our young people also going forward. As you look at things, consider the source, consider who's telling you this. Consider and try to look at more perspectives on any given subject. I don't know if that's an answer to it, but I think that that's a really important component in going forward and how we deal with where we are today and how we move forward.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. That was Wanda's question, and she wanted to ask you.
Oh.
She wanted that to be asked. Wanda, Dr. Wanda. Gabe, Susan, Alan, give me a minute here. I have them all jotted down. Gabe, Susan, Alan, Matt, do any of you youngins, and I say youngins because you're the youngest ones on the call, Do any of you youngins have any questions for Karyn pertaining on any aspects of anything? Do you guys have any questions? Gabe, no?
I think she answered them all.
You don't have any questions for her?
Good answer, Gabriel.
Good answer. Little Alan, do you have any questions, or Susan?
She explained them all.
Huh? Matt, what about you?
Jerome, I have a question. This
Yes,
is Sheila.
Sheila Brooks.
Hey,
Hi,
how you
Sheila
guys
Brooks.
doing? Hey, Miss Karyn, how you doing? I haven't seen you in what, 8 months? So my question is under our current events right now, we have a lot that's impacting our everyday lives, right? So my question is, are the current events right now, is that sparking any creativity for another book per se?
You know.
Yes.
I'm trying to write my second book.
Mute.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
okay. No, I'm over here trying to write my second book, and it's hard not to write directly to what's going on, right? It's hard to stay on subject. There actually was some activism in a complete background stuff in the book that I'm writing, and now it's creeping up, trying to kick its way into the foreground, which will change a lot of the story if it succeeds. But it's affecting the book that I'm writing right now. I might have to put it aside and write something else, because it's like for all of us, we feel it, right? You feel it all the time in you. It's very difficult to sit and try to write something that has very little or nothing to do with that. So it's affecting me that way. It's also affecting my next choice for the next Sweet Blackberry story. I had a few people in mind, and somebody just went to the top of the list. Somebody who I think it would do us all, it would be good for all of us to learn more about. So I'll get the opportunity to learn more about this person's contribution to the civil rights fight. And I think it would be great to be able to give this story to kids. So yeah, this time and what we're going through is definitely affecting me. Definitely affecting me. I don't know if it's all good, because it's just got me like, all kind of, but I'm trying to funnel it,
Yeah. Karyn, I have a question. First and foremost, this is just based in the work that we do. How are you doing? Like, how are things going for you right now in our given climate, COVID-19, race relations? You spoke a little bit to your son, your family's safe, everybody's good, I hope. Like,
we're very fortunate. We have some place we're able to do our whole lockdown, kind of with some space and quiet. We're really fortunate. I have a teenage daughter, though. She just turned 17 this week, and she's having, it's very challenging. My son's doing really well. I'm doing good. I'm naturally kind of a hermit, so being away from people and not being out, all the time, I can function really well. I'm fine. My daughter, it's not just being away from her friends. It was hard with COVID, but then when everything else started erupting, we live in New York. We're not in New York as I speak to you right now, but we live in New York, and it's really difficult for her to not be on the front lines every day out there marching. She's having a very difficult time. I mean, just this morning again, she sees all this going on. And when we live in New York, we're able to be out there and do stuff. And we went to New York a few days ago. We went to a rally, and we were there very briefly, and we did go to something, but she came back feeling like, I want to do more. I should be doing more. Because she feels helpless, like a lot of us. We feel like we want to be doing more. She's also, she's feeling a lot of stress. So she wants to be out there doing things. So she's been making phone calls and trying to do as much as she can. And she feels better every time she does something. She's been creating, which is great. She's been painting and stuff. And so these things help. But thank you for asking. It is definitely a very trying time for everybody.
I have one more follow-up question, just curious, because I too have a daughter who is 11. Jerome and Andre have been great role models for her. She's been on the calls the last couple of weeks and wasn't able to join today. But as someone who is mixed, what are some advices that you would give to a young mixed child coming up in the realities in the world that we are in?
Oh, it's so, I mean, you know, I'm learning. It's very different from when I grew up. I grew up mixed in the 70s and 80s. Very different time, very different. And it's very funny because I've talked about my mother grew up in the Jim Crow South as a child, and then as she was a young adult through the civil rights era, right? So she's dealt with a lot. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, much quieter in terms of, you know, in terms of race in the news. It was much quieter during that brief period of time. And my daughter has been coming up now again with, I mean, she's been to so many demonstrations and protests. You know, I didn't come up going to all of it. It's been in being mixed, it's definitely challenging for her. It was especially challenging for my daughter because my daughter is very fair. And so she sometimes feels like people don't take her seriously, like she shouldn't have a voice. And that's a big challenge for her to deal with. But, you know, it's so corny. Like I grew up in a free to be you and me world. Anybody familiar with Free to Be You and Me? Do you remember that show? It's like, it's all like serious, like love and peace and a real hippie kind of thing. And I grew up with that, and it's all about you, the individual. And now I think it's, there's just a lot more, I'm finding myself in wearing an I mean, I don't mean to, but you can't help but wear the activist hat a little bit. We're in a world where I want to educate myself more about what's going on. And I'm happy to say my daughter does, and I think it's helpful. I think it's really helpful to understand by educating yourself about all that's going on. I don't know exactly what challenges your daughter experiences. My son and daughter are very different. He's not really, he doesn't have as hard a time as she does. What is your daughter, does she have any challenges with being?
You know, I think it's just the challenges of life. You know, I mean, her dad's black and her mom's white. Like, I mean, the challenges and realities of how we were raised is totally different. You know, so how we parent is totally different.
Right.
The dichotomy of that. You know, I grew up in the 80s and early 90s. I grew up watching your show. You know, that was my reality, like as a kid. So like I am now in a place where I think it was washed over in the 90s. You know, like we weren't really kind of talking about things. Rodney King, and then that didn't really happen after that. You know, like it changed a little bit, but like it still glossed over. And so my fear right now is that we are in this moment where in history things are changing, or you know, people are out. You know, I think the last time I checked, every state's had a protest. 18 different countries have stood up and said something. But you know, what's going to be the byproduct as we move forward? So you know, people like yourself writing books and sharing your knowledge and things like that. So I was just curious. There's nothing in particular that she's experienced yet, but I know that it's coming.
Yeah, I think the thing is just educating, you know, staying educated with what's going on as much as possible. And if you can help her with her confidence, you know, I think when we've got confident young people who aren't afraid to ask questions, to voice their opinions, to know that they have a place to say something and to stand up, I think all those things help so much. And that's what I really would encourage. I'm trying to do with my kids.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for sharing. And Troy, thank you for asking those questions. We have some questions coming in. Yeah, Yvonne says, should there be separate ethnic studies programs, or should every subject area include more diverse content? I ask because the CDE is in the process of creating an ethics studies program.
An ethics studies
And
program?
ethnic studies.
Oh, so should there, I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand the question exactly.
Should there be a separate ethnic studies program, or should every subject area include more diverse content?
Oh. I mean, that's a discussion. I you know, I can say something. I'm certainly not the voice of knowledge over here in this. I mean, it seems to me like, I don't know. It seems like you want to include more diverse stuff, but then, I don't know. Does somebody else want to pick that up? Because I feel like this is a conversation to have. I just don't have an answer to that. Anybody have any thoughts on
Anybody
that?
wants to chime in?
Can I say something? This is right up my alley, because we used to have these discussions all the time in our program, we talked about multiculturalism, we talked about ethnic studies, and this is just a different perspective to get us moving on and progressing in a more inclusive way. When you talk about studying ethnicity, I'm just going to study it. To me, it bothers me to say, oh, we're going to have an ethnic studies program here. What does that mean? We all have an ethnicity. We're all an ethnicity. Are we just going to study ethnicity, or are we going to include it into our program? I just wonder if having a separate ethnic studies program is doing justice to inclusivity, or is this putting just different ethnicities under the microscope? And then, so how far can we progress? I don't know. That's just something, we used to have these discussions all the time. And it's just something that I think of sometimes, and I wanted to throw that out there. It just seems as though maybe there has to be different terminology, more inclusive terminology, but then maybe that's just my thought.
She is correct. We have had those discussions in my classroom as well.
Yes, ma'am, Wanda. Yes, ma'am.
And we have sat across from each other, and it seems as though, to a lack of a better terminology, we all have been taught the same Caucasian history for 365 days a year, except for the 1 month in February where you get Martin Luther King for a week.
Right. So my whole thing is, when you talk about ethnic studies,
right?
Well, why are we just going to study it? Why don't we include it all?
Correct.
Maybe be more diverse in, hey, you know what? In science, there's other people other than white people who did this. There's other people, but the terminology has to be in such a way that it's inclusive.
Right.
It's the same thing with gender. It's the same thing with gender, with gender construct.
Correct.
Right? We talk about, because one of my big things is, I'm sorry, my eyes are lighting up because this is my thing. One of my big things is women in gender studies, for lack of, because I have women in gender. That's one of my certificates that I got. Yay! Finally got through that program.
Right.
But when you're just studying women, how does that make me feel? Now you're just studying me. You're studying what's feminine, what's masculine, what's black, what's white, what's this, what's that. So maybe we need to start taking a look at different terminology, more inclusive terminology when we say ethnic studies.
Right.
What does that really mean, and how can we be more inclusive in our terminology? I mean, that's where we're going. So I don't know. I want to throw that out there.
And that's where we go back with Karyn that goes and writes books about boxcar, where she writes about the different people that we don't always hear about than in our 1 month of Black history, where you talk about Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. You hear about those ones that you don't normally hear about, which really gives us the opportunity to show students the videos of that Sweet Blackberry has, that you get to see and introduce students to those different things. They don't have to wait until high school to gender studies, or they don't wait to college to get to gender studies, and it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
It should not. You should not have to wait to high school, or wait for, you have a teacher that introduces students in their classroom, you know, different ethnic, you have to wait upon that teacher. It should be taught from a very, you know, young age, these different cultures, these different ethnicities. You know, you don't want to hear about just Hiawatha. You don't want to hear just about these different Aztec.
Exactly. In a holistic sense. But when we're
Yes.
talking about ethnic studies and we make a single program, and I understand it's progress, but when we put it into a single program, we're singling it out as it's a subject. You know, it's not, but it's something. Ethnicity, sexuality, all these sorts of things are all part of being the whole human being. So we have to find some way of making it more of a holistic way. I don't know.
Thank you guys for sharing. I want to go ahead. Troy, hand is up. I want to, again, don't want to take too much time from also Karyn. Go ahead.
I really just want to say this, and I think that this message is more directed to the young people that are on this call, because I think us as adults, we realize that the system is working the way it's working because it's created the way it was created. They don't want to tell stories. They don't want us to have an inclusive kind of history, because they don't want you to believe anything else than what they want to create the narrative for you. And so that is where the problem is. So we have to do better as a collective in telling our stories and sharing our truths. However we can do that in whatever medium you can. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a classroom. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a movie, in a book, whatever that is. Whoever you come encountered with, that's your opportunity to be able to share your story and to share your truth. And so, like, there's a whole host of things that I could share about that, but that's just the piece that I feel like is most important, because they don't want us to know, because if we don't know, then we don't rise up and we don't aspire to be something more than what they create us to be.
And thank you for sharing that, Troy. And Karyn, kind of chiming in on what was just said, and going back to your book. You talk was brought up about sharing a story. Is that something that the things that we need to know is, as an author and a writer, is it to be able to share the story, be a voice to the voiceless, and how does your book can really impact that, as us educators, as you're hearing the discussions on how we can implement these books in our education and kind of change that narrative.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Because some of it was glitching out while you were talking, so I missed every third word.
Okay, so just it's okay. Going back to some of the things that was said, the different points that was said was to what I heard was kind of being the voice to the voiceless and changing the narrative by taking an opportunity to have these books, such as the books that you have written, and implement into our circles, implement into our schools, to get more, to get a voice out there in regards of what's not being talked about, as far as our history, as far as culture, as far as the issues that's going on into the world, how that can relate.
Yeah, well, even perspective. I mean, hopefully it's a different perspective, right? It's a different, there are stories like that I'm trying to get out. It's also coming from a different perspective. And I think that's also important. And I think that's part of, like, even what Troy is saying is to the young people that are listening, that when you contribute, you've got the stories you're telling, you've got your perspective, you've also got things that you're telling from your perspective. And I think all of those things are important in providing narratives and providing stories out there that people can relate to, like you said, to giving voice that we haven't heard before.
Okay, awesome. Just real quick, I want to, Dory, if you can chime in to what you posted just now regarding the work that you're doing in Truth and Reconciliation, and because you're coming from Canada, and there's a different perspective and a different way you have put things into place to bring inclusion to the cultures, and how we can utilize a book such as Karyn into the works, into the again the spaces that we're working in.
Yes, as an Aboriginal Indigenous educator, we get to do all those wonderful things that Karyn's speaking about, because we are bringing in our stories. We're bringing in, I'm from the Sekani Nation. We have the Cree Nation, we have Carrier Nation, we have many, many nations. And so as an educator, we're bringing in all these stories and all these experiences and history of the North American Indian. And because, you know, the Native people and the Black history is very much walking side by side, because everything that that both our peoples have gone through is quite a bit the same. And actually there was a Cree gentleman who came with a Black man who was, they did a skit for all the schools, and he was a hip hop teacher, and he met this Cree man, and he was out in the on the plains, and he was getting ready to do his hoop dance, and the hip hop fella said, you know, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm getting ready for my dance. And he goes, well, you know, my culture, my family comes from Africa and we dance. And he goes, well, I brought my drum. And he goes, well, we drum. And then he talked about how his history, when they were brought over, how they were slaves and all their culture was taken. Well, the Aboriginal person said, well, so was ours. They stuck us on reserves. They took all our cultures, all our stories away from us. So BC has made through the United Nations, through the DRIP, I guess it was an act that they would allow, in order for the Aboriginal people to really have truth and reconciliation in BC. In the other province they teach us, but BC made this agreement with the UN that they would allow Aboriginal people to be able to share their truth of the residential schools, of all the mistreatment of their culture, everything taken from them, their language, and to be able to implement it in programs in the schools. So when I'm hearing about Karyn's book, I'm thinking, wow, that's beautiful, because that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm bringing history from right across Canada and the United States for Aboriginal people, and we're teaching it to our children and said, this is our history. And we're bringing in our legends and our stories from all different nations, saying that this is what happened to us as Navajo. This is what happened to us as, you know, Dakota. So the government has put this in place, and our truth is to tell our truth, our history. Our reconciliation is to not only teach our history, but to bring back the culture, bring back the language. And in Prince George area, it's Sekani and Carrier Nation. And so we teach both in the schools, but we teach Ojibwe, we teach all nations, Métis. And so that's part of the government being able to put an Aboriginal worker in every school in BC so that everyone will know our history.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's powerful.
Excited about the book, yeah. Because then again, like you said, it's another story coming in and another perspective coming in. And you know what? We can, we're like knives. We just sharpen each other. We can take the tools and put it in our toolbox, use it in our schools. I work for the school district, so I'm really liking what I'm hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dory. Thank you, Dory. So it's good to know that there's some background. If somebody can just put mute. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you're driving. Thank you. So I think Karyn, that's great information. We need a blueprint and something to work off of, but to utilize the book, such as the book that Karyn has written, and to be able to put these in our youth hand and kind of rewrite history in a way it's in a way it's perceived, and to do it in the right way. And we all have a responsibility to do that. And so talking about that, there was a Wanda wrote, we just heard about many educators that spoke, and can we get some feedback on how the students feel? So in what you heard and what we've been talking about, what's your feelings on this, and how is it relating to you today? And as far as if you have any other if you have any questions about Karyn, go ahead and ask. And I think it's okay, Karyn, if that's okay with you, they can also ask you about your role at Hillary Banks. so go ahead, guys.
Questions are okay. There's nothing off limits, I don't think.
Awesome. So go ahead, guys. Youth, you have any questions for Karyn, or just to express how you feel as far as what was being spoke about?
Anybody?
Gabe?
Alan had a question.
Yeah? Okay, go ahead. Oh, asked? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it up there.
Yeah, no, Alan had a question.
I'm still
He
hearing
put it in
a
the chat.
lot of feedback. Okay. After the protests and riots calm down, what do you hope to see after? Good question.
What do I hope to see? I mean, I hope that, I mean, I really want to see change. I want to see real change, though. I mean, I want to see real change. I don't want this to be something that's going to happen again. I think we all feel like this. It's like there's this feeling of like, oh gosh, please don't let this just be a moment that feels really good right now, and then things kind of soften, and then next thing you know, we're back to the status quo, and you know, we feel like we got tamped down, but we get caught up in our lives, and then nothing really changed. I really want to see, and it feels different this time. Everyone is saying so. I'm seeing things. I want to see real changes in structures and in institutions. I think we're starting to. I think people are starting to tear things down and rebuild. I'm hoping, and really looking at how a lot of things that aren't working need to be, we can't just kind of like patch on obviously we can't just patch on a Black Lives Matter sticker and say we stand with Black Lives Matter and then go about their business. I mean, there has to be real change across the board. I'm just hoping that we come out, that's what we end up seeing. I know it's going to be a big battle if we want to see that. It's not going to be something small. But, you know, I just want to see something real that we look at and go, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe there was this immense change. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like we're burgeoning. That feels like that's what's going on. And I just hope it's true, that something big changes.
Awesome. Thank you for asking that question, Alan. That's a great question. Is there any other question from the youth? There's a question asked from Yvonne to the youth. What do you want to learn? It says, ask the young people what they want to learn in school. Ooh, great question. What do you want to learn in school, guys? This is towards the youth from Yvonne. She needs to know that CDE. Go ahead, Alan.
I feel like one thing I want to learn in school is what happened before they brought slaves over, because that's what they really talk about is like slave, and then till now, but they never talked about how the United States was before and all that before. They don't really talk about that.
Awesome. Definitely strong topic. Karyn, you want to chime in on that?
I want to. I don't. I think that that's really interesting to want to know about that, because I think it helps you understand a little bit. If you can really get in there and you can understand better what the setup was, what the situation was that would make that the situation to go that way, and why it would take like it did. I mean, I always am so shocked by, I mean, we all are, it's so silly to say, I'm so shocked by slavery, but just so shocked that because you can dominate another human being, because you can harm another human being, that you would. And it would be interesting to see what the climate was like, what the country was really going through. I'm not a historian, so I don't understand all of the particulars, but to understand what would drive people to feel okay with something like that. Yes, I mean, I don't know that, I mean, not everybody did, but enough did.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's an interesting observation or want that Alan has.
Yeah.
Okay, Gabe.
Thank you. Is any other, Gabe?
Gabriel, it's your turn.
Great. I would like to add on to what Alan said about learning about what happened before slavery and how it led to slavery as well in school, because they don't really like mention that at all, even in Texas. So I would really like to learn more about what happened.
Awesome. Was it Rebecca?
Bex, you have a question?
Yeah, she has a comment. She talks really soft and it's hard for her to figure out what words she wants to say.
Rebecca, you have to type it in because you're.
Would like to learn more about the history that she's not learning. Because we've been having discussions here at home. I've been showing her this.
If you want to type it in, it sounded like she was saying she wants to just learn more about her history. Because those are things that haven't been discussed. Is that correct? Okay.
And while we're waiting for Susan, one of our other students agreed with Alan and Gabriel and said that they would like to know more in history class about why we are where we are and what came before us.
Awesome. And those are good question, guys, because even us as adults ask those questions and we have to go out and usually research it because it's not there in our history books. It says Katina would like to learn more about the history that is not taught. Yes. Yes, definitely.
You can learn some of it from Black Bay.
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Tron.
Yes.
Okay. And let me turn this thing on here. My question, and I have my son right next to me too. I have 4 sons and 1 daughter. And when all of this stuff came up, it was an extreme conversation to have. And many of the questions, when they got really detailed, there was really no answer to. But one thing I want to ask Miss Karyn is, I have some biracial friends as well, who have been sheltered, and I understand it. I know their parents, and they've been sheltered for most of their lives, and now they're in their 40s, and this thing happened in the world, which has forced them to, can you close that? that which has forced them to now answer some questions, because now they're looking back and hearing about things that I learned early on, like Emmett Till, first time ever hearing about that, first time hearing about these great things that happened to people of color, in the history, and it just wasn't taught in school. They missed it, and they were sheltered from it, and now as an adult they're trying to compensate and try to regain their composure right now. Now they're learning all of this history, knowing all of this stuff that's going on. And so just talk a little bit about that. Maybe if there was something that you've experienced. And then one last thing would be when they realize that maybe they've suffered some racism in their life, but they just didn't recognize it.
Sure.
And now, as they go back and they think back, they're starting to pinpoint, oh, when they did that to me, it could have been what I looked like.
Yeah.
And so if you could just talk a little bit about that. I'm a guest, so I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to ask that question.
I think that's great. Thank you so much. It's funny. I didn't learn a lot of stuff in growing up in school about Black history or about like Emmett Till or anything. I learned a lot of that stuff in adulthood. And it was funny. My mom was a librarian, and she headed the Black Resource Center where she worked. And she grew up in South Carolina, is segregated, so she had a different education. She assumed I was learning in school a lot of stuff I wasn't learning because, I think growing up in segregated schools, there were a lot of things that were taught that in the schools I went to in California, in Southern California, they weren't, they picked and choose, and there were a lot of things left out. And my mom was surprised to find out there were so many things in Black history that I didn't know. But I became interested, with her help. And just when I would find something, I would go further and investigate further. It wasn't so much that I was sheltered. Like I said, my mom, who was Black, really just thought I was being taught a lot of things. She just assumed. I grew up in large cities, mostly outside of Los Angeles and in New York. So I was, you couldn't be too sheltered from a lot of things. And as time went on, and especially once I got into, being interested in Sweet Blackberry, even before I ever started it, actually launched it, and the internet started to grow, I started to really learn a lot. And I just think it's really important for all of us to educate ourselves. It's so easy now to find out stuff. There's so much information out there. Of course, you have to be careful to make sure you're getting, stuff that's the truth. But there's so much out there, and I think we can take it upon ourselves to read and learn and go further. And like I said before, investigate who the source is as often as possible too, so that we're not getting some skewed version of history. But look and find out and ask questions like, you find out about the Green Book. One thing leads to another. When someone introduced me to the idea that there was this thing, that for Black people, places that were okay for them to go when they drove across country to stop, safe places. When I heard about that, that's suddenly that opens up other pockets in my mind to what it must. Oh, well, what was it like without it? Like, so you start to ask yourself questions. I think it's important to be curious and to force yourself to be curious instead of just content, which maybe with some of your friends, they've been sheltered, but they've been fine. And now they've had a real wake up call, learning all this new information about injustices that have been happening all along. But the information is out there. So you start where you are. Like anything else, you start where you are, but get in there and learn. There's a lot of information that's being put out, and I'm really happy to say that my kids, like son is in Black Student Union, so he's learning a lot of information and getting a chance to discuss things back and forth and have dialogue, so that it's not just one way of being hammered into him. He's able to say something, and then someone else says something back, and they have conversations about what's going on, how they feel, differing ways. All of that, I think communication, discussion is important as well. And safety. People need to feel safe. Like your friends need to feel like they're safe to ask questions if they don't know things. You know, if they need to feel around people who they feel like they're safe in discussing things with.
Thank you for answering that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you for your.
Awesome. So I know we're coming down to the time of winding things down. Is there any other questions? Any other burning questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question, Karyn, about the feedback on your book.
Yeah.
So I love the book. It really opens up these informational doors for to shape young minds so that they're more mindful of different cultures, different backgrounds as they move forward. But as I wrote your bio, I delve into your background, and I know that you also got some negative feedback from people saying that children shouldn't be exposed to this type of history. What do you say to those people that think children shouldn't be exposed to this history?
Oh, I think it's so stupid. I don't have a lot to say except, whatever. I mean, honestly, it's the truth is important in all, right? That's the thing, is we need the truth. We can't hide things. We can't gloss over things. We can't whitewash things. We gotta have the truth, and children are ready for it. You'd be really surprised. When I started Sweet Blackberry, my first story, the impetus for the whole thing was Henry Box Brown's story. The story of an enslaved man who mailed himself to freedom in a box. I couldn't believe this had really happened to a person, but I also couldn't believe I had never heard it before. And so I was really anxious to tell the story. And while I'm writing the story, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm writing this for small kids and it's slavery. How do you convey slavery to little kids? And mind you, my daughter was a baby then. I hadn't had children of my own to communicate with yet. And it was such a sensitive subject, but I also knew in my gut that it was a very important subject. So I got an advisor on board from Hunter College, somebody whose area was this, so I can make sure that when I wrote it, I sent it to her to make sure she was good with it. And she was like, no, it is important, and you're right. Again, kids can handle more than you think. I mean, I tried to handle it just like I did in How High the Moon. You try to give them what they can handle and understand. And yeah, you're going to be sensitive in some areas, but some things are going to be ugly. Sorry, it's an ugly history. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen, and I don't think there's anything healthy about lying to kids, about pretending that these things didn't happen. I think that is so, I mean, there's nothing more detrimental than, I mean, look at our society. There are so many people right now who don't realize some of the horrors that have happened. And it's, lynching is a reality that happened in this country, that happens in this country. But people need to know this and understand this. And children and some of it they will be horrified by, but they will ask the questions. In my home, I came upon a book that had a picture of a lynching, a mob lynching, and I hadn't heard about it. I came upon the picture by myself as a kid, and I remember just it was like my head spun around. I couldn't understand anything about it. I think what's good about having it in a book, especially if it's in a classroom situation, but you're able to discuss it. It puts it in a way where the kid can say, what does this mean? What is this? And they have someone who can talk to them about it and talk them through it and help them understand this and understand this part of history. I think that discussion and that understanding is very important in knowing the truth. The truth is always the answer to me. Let me
Karyn,
thank you. That was very insightful.
Really, thank you, Reggie, for that question. Karyn, really fast, I knew this question was gonna pop up somewhere in our dialogue, but one of the questions was if you could tell a funny story or a memory of working with Will Smith.
Who?
You know, Fresh Prince. that guy who brought you onto the Zoom Snap thing you guys just did.
What? Okay. Oh, funny story with Will. I don't know. That guy's not very funny. I don't know. I mean, we had such a good time. He's so stupid. He's just so silly and hilarious. We had a, I wish.
What was it like to have your reunion when you guys had your reunion without James?
I cried when we got off the line.
Aww.
Because we were all there together, like we're all here, and it was so good, but we couldn't touch, and it wasn't like we had any promise of like, but I'm gonna see you next weekend, and it was so nice to see everyone and be with everybody, and then we hung up, and I was like, I went into the other room to my family, and I was like, that was really sad, because that was it. Now we're back here and I'm not with them. And then in like no time, Tatiana rang my phone and we talked for an hour. But it was, it's hard because we feel very much when we see each other, it's like we pick up where we left off. We were tight. We're like family. So there's this real ease when we're with each other, and trust and love and understanding. Like we really, really honestly, is the truth. We really have that with each other. Even Will, who's like off on, another universe someplace, we still have that. And so it's hard to not see everybody for a long time. We were so tight. You want to see people more. But like I said, Todd and I got on the phone. We talked for an hour. It was great. It was awesome. No, I don't.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Will did moon James Avery once on the set, which is always funny to me. But
Who was, I know this answer because I've had this conversation with you.
What?
I've had this conversation with you back in February, but who was your favorite celebrity guest on Fresh Prince?
Oh, strangely enough, Regis Philbin. Weird answer. We had Zsa Zsa Gabor, Elton Brule, Tom Jones, a million great, sports and stars and singers. We had like incredible people. Regis Philbin was awesome. So funny and dry. He's like really dry. So it's just the kind of humor I really respond to. And so he was very fun to act with because he was so dry. I was come on as a regular. Oh my God, he was funny. He had me dying. He was so funny. But I didn't take a picture with Regis. I took a picture with like Tom Jones, and Zsa Zsa let me wear her ring all day. Yeah, it was a trip. It was weird. We had these guests, and if I had been smart, I would have been like getting their scripts and signing things and getting pictures so that I could all sell all of it on eBay later. But who would have known? I saw somebody on Twitter was like, oh, look at this gem I found that I won at an auction, and it was my script from Fresh Prince with all my doodles on it. And I was like,
wow.
Wow.
I had 6 years worth of those. I should have just kept them.
Just kept them.
And there are people that would have them sign every week. There are people that would come up and have everybody sign the front of them. Those people probably, been selling those things. But I wasn't thinking like that, unfortunately.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Troy, you had a question?
I just wanted to address something that I appreciate the stories and I appreciate the laughter. It definitely is awesome to hear that. As you were doing that, you were kind of speaking to something about lynching, and Alan, and I don't know that if any of the other kids, as adults, we all know what this is, but Alan asked, what's lynching? And so
thank you for catching that.
want to speak to that because we get to that before we get off the call.
Yes, thank you for catching that.
If you want to speak to it, Andre, Jerome, or I'm happy to speak to it. I mean,
why don't you speak to it?
Yeah.
That you're happy to speak.
So Alan, what lynching is that was basically a form of what white people used to do to African American men, women back in the days of slavery, where they would take them and they would crowd around them and then they would hang them on a tree, off of buildings. So that was a real reality. And what I will share with you is that some people believe, and I don't know how I stand with this, but I've heard people say that what's happening to our men of color with police is a new form of lynching.
Right.
In the sense of it. So I don't know if that speaks to the context, if anybody else wants to add to that, but that's.
I want to say something. Thank you for saying that. I know it's such a delicate thing to try to explain, and I appreciate that you did that. And Alan, I hope that you can get some kind of understanding of it and hopefully talk to someone about it a little bit more, to have even more understanding. Recently, there was something that my daughter read about somebody being lynched, or about a lynching. And so she took it very literally. And I guess lynching also pertains to a public, kind of like you were saying, doing this is like a display thing, like a public killing. So it's not necessarily, I guess it also, that's why people also say it goes beyond the hangings that we associate with lynching. And now the definition, I guess, expands over a public killing of this kind for race, because of race. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah. Anybody else? Just everyone touched on the same thing. It was always a sense of public display regarding lynching. It was to bring fear and oppression to the Africans at the time, and it went into, of course, Jim Crow regarding lynching, so they won't run from the plantation because they know what they would get if they did. And so that has been something that has been carried out, again, back in the Jim Crow days, and now even today in a different form, but the same message, to fear and what will come from if you say something, if you rise up, if you do something out of the order of what we want you to do. So there's a lot of, everyone said was right on, history behind it. I don't want to go too deep into it because of the time that we have now left. But that is another conversation that we can definitely have. These are conversations I do have with our circle groups regarding these things, because they need to know this is part of the history that we've experienced, and part of our history coming up. And again, these are things that we need to know. And that's a question, because you see what's not being taught in history books. That's why that question came out. And so thank you, Troy, for catching that we can talk about that more, and also Karyn for elaborating on that again. But this is definitely something that we definitely want to have another conversation on. So
there's a really good book having to do with the new Jim Crow, and I think Miss Wanda Patrick got me onto this, and also it's something that we use very much in our program as well. Michelle Alexander, I put it in the chat. The new Jim Crow, talking about the incarceration of black male youth in particular. The war on drugs is synonymous with the war on black male culture. And it talks a lot about modern day interpretations of what lynchings are, and it's very public and it's very out there and it's still very much there. But it's something, it's kind of a dense read, but it's a good read and it gives a good perspective on what's still happening today. I just wanted to throw that out there because when you talked about the public lynchings and everything, that it very much deals with it. So it's an awesome, awesome resource.
Alan, I have the book, Alan, Little Al. I can drop it off so you can read it if you want to. It's a really great book. I read it last summer. But I'll just add this before we get off the call. What lynching was in the 50s and the 60s was a movement for white people to show power over African Americans that were their slaves. And what most people don't realize is it still is happening today. They're just not lynching you from a tree. They're saying it verbally, and they're saying it in other terms. So it's still alive today. It's just a reenactment, some other way of how it's going on. So I just wanted to say that as we segue out of this.
And can I just add to what you just said? It is the fact that our incarcerated youth and our incarcerated adults then lose their rights to do certain things that are, our rights as citizens, but it's taken away. And those are the things that Jim Crow was there to do as well. And so before you leave, if I could just say, I had a conversation with Ms. Parsons. Can I say this to the youth that I talk to get out of this Jim Crow, new Jim Crow situation where eventually they're going to lose all their rights if they don't turn their life around, like immediately? What words would you want me to share with them to encourage them to do something different, go a different way?
You're asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
I think you said it. I mean, I think that is something that is the threat too, is that there is this systematic stripping away of rights, and people can get in trouble for small infractions for nothing even, but then you have a record, and then that follows you and that affects you, and then that starts to pull your freedoms away. I think that's, and that has been systematically done. But then, you just help it along if you are doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, like what you're talking about, talking to people. I think you basically said it.
Yeah.
Well, I will repeat that, and I'll say that I talked to someone that wrote this book. And so I really appreciate this whole setting. This is just a great, we're on summer break now, and I have all my children here, but I'm so glad to Colette Ferris to invite me to get on today. I appreciate it.
It was good talking to you.
Yes, thank you, Taron. Thank you. So in that, I know this conversation is a very good conversation. However, we have to close because we want to, again, respect Karyn's time from being with us all the way from, where are you at right now? Massachusetts. So that's East Coast time, y'all. So what, three hours ahead of us?
Yep.
So it's in the evening there. She's probably hungry. Dinner time.
It's already 5 o'clock over there.
Oh, Karyn don't eat.
Karyn don't eat. Karyn don't eat.
Karyn doesn't eat.
Yes, she does.
Not unless it's Mexican food.
Unless it's Mexican. She tears up some Mexican.
Okay,
right.
we got to get you back over here then with some Mexican food then.
Yes. If I could have just a minute, I wanted to let Karyn know that Karyn's book has made its rounds through my family. Everyone loves it. In fact, we've got 2 or 3 teachers that have had their children read their family. We've had children all the way from 8 years old through teenage read your book. Everyone loves it.
Thank you.
And for those that was saying that they were, didn't want to know what to tell their children. I've got a granddaughter that was 8 that read it, and she loved it. So, you know, don't be afraid to have those conversations.
Right. Thank you. I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
So just to let you know, from 8 years old through teenage have read those books. We've got teachers that's reading, their students, their children are reading the books. Everyone loves a book. So Karyn, you're going to be getting letters, emails from students that love your book.
Thank you.
And we will have that a mandatory reading for our students that we work with in our circles. So those books will be shared. So is there anything, Karyn, that you'd like to share your last words before we close out?
No, I just want to say thank you. I mean, this was really nice and enlightening, and just love conversations like that. I would just encourage everyone to keep having conversations with the people around you, with your family and your circles. I think it's so important for us to ask questions, to stay curious, to feel like we are safe in asking questions, because that way we can all have the opportunity to grow and to learn and to be advocates and allies as well. So I just want to encourage more of this, but outside of this space, all over. I want us to all remember how good this is and how enriching it is, and keep it up. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
All.
Thank you so much, Karyn. We appreciate you. I'm going to take a picture of everyone just for our records. Don't worry. So y'all like, ooh, this is for our records. Just say, oh, Sheila, no, you didn't. All of a sudden, Sheila Brooks came. Hello, Sheila.
Because you said picture, so she had to get herself dolled up to be on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Who else is that? Nicole, hey. I'm glad we can see y'all beautiful faces. All you guys are beautifully, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I want to say thank you for being a part of this call. And so I'm going to hand it over to Jerome just to give what's upcoming in the next couple weeks. So, and then we can close out. Go ahead, Jerome.
So next Friday, we've been blessed to have our dear friend Rebecca's husband. He's a fireman. He's an amazing man. And he's going to do a virtual tour of the fire station and tell us what it's like to be a fireman in this day and age of what's happening. And then to close us out at the end of the month, Karyn, I'll call you to see if you're available to come back on. We are doing a live chat with the one and only civil rights activist, Dolores Huerta. She has decided, after everything that's going on, and she's been working with Andre and our team for years, that she said, I don't want to do a video chat to end it. I want to be there live. So we're going to have a Q&A and live chat with Dolores Huerta on June 26th. So if you all are available to come back to see Dolores, please. If you have children, come back next week so that they can experience the wonderful virtual fire tour that Craig is going to give. And my wish for all of you is that you stay safe, stay healthy, and be blessed in this COVID situation and also what's happening in the world. So,
thank you,
Karyn,
guys.
I'll call you tomorrow to check in, my friend.
Thank you, Karyn. We love you, Karyn. We appreciate you. Now you're part of the Restorative Justice League family.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Love you, Karyn.
Thank you, Get a shirt.
Thank you, Colette.
Thank you, Karyn.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Gabe.
Bye.
Bye, Lynn. Bye, Alex.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with us, Kofi,
Bye, guys.
Lynn, Tyrone. Thank you.
Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Phil,
Tyrone.
Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.